Welcome to the farm, everyone.
I know, we're taking this farm to a whole new level, aren't we?
All this week, as we've been saying, to the sound effects as well, this is Peter.
Right.
All this week, we are going to be taking a look at the farming industry, from how it's dealing with climate change to what Brexit means for the future of agriculture right across the UK.
Yeah, along the way, we're being helped by the Stanley family, who've invited us to join them on their farm in Leicestershire for the week. So we've sent Graham Satchel along this morning. Morning, Graham.
Morning, Steph. More cows. We are cow-tastic this morning. These are longhorn cattle. Aren't these guys fantastic? We're on the Stanley farm. It's a mixed farm. They have arable and 150 of these guys. Today, as you say, we're looking at farming and in particular climate change. Farmers have been rather getting it in the neck in recent weeks, being blamed for their greenhouse gas emissions, how much they're producing, how much they're contributing to climate change. So this morning we're looking at one way that they might be able to mitigate that in the future with the help of a very unusual plant, maybe the most important plant that you've probably never heard of.
It is the way that carbon was fixed from the atmosphere and stored as peatlands. I would classify it as the most important plant on Earth.
Is this humble moss part of the answer to climate change? Sphagnum is unusual. It has no roots, so it grows on top of itself. The base eventually forms into peat, which is almost 100% carbon. Neil and his wife Barbara have been propagating sphagnum for a specific purpose. The moss they grow here is being used to restore damaged peatlands. In places like the Peak District, much of the peat has either been drained, dug up or destroyed by pollution. So now sphagnum is being planted on thousands of acres here.
Peatlands form 15% of the UK land area, so it's a very significant part. Sphagnum moss is the plant that decomposes over time to form the peat underneath, and the peat is our biggest carbon store in this country. Okay, so here's some that's dried and chopped sphagnum.
Sphagnum can be grown as a commercial crop. Once dried, it's used in growing as an alternative to peat. But longer term, the hope is more ambitious.
There was a time when the world seemed so close to falling apart.
This short film, made in association with the National Trust, imagines a future where there are carbon farms. Farmers growing sphagnum to take carbon out of the atmosphere.
Instead of being up there, it's trapped in here. And that's where it'll stay.
Farmers could play a really important role, an absolutely vital role in carbon farming, just to lock up the carbon dioxide, but also to farm it as a commercial crop as well.
Sphagnum is the natural carbon sequester. Why do we need any other method of doing it? It will do it for us. All we've got to do is plant it and grow it.
So there we are. Are we really going to have carbon farms and carbon farmers in the future? With us this morning is Joe Stanley, whose farm we're on, and Professor Lindsay Stringer. Morning to you both. Joe, what do you think? Can you imagine yourself as a carbon farmer in the future?
Well, I think it's an interesting project. It's obviously in the early stages. I mean, anything's possible. The essential thing with that is it has the great potential to sequester huge amounts of carbon from the atmosphere to help us, to help the industry meet its net zero target. But the essential thing will be, how is that realised? We'll need to have a mechanism in place to enable commercialisation of that sphagnum technology.
Yes, who would pay for it?
Absolutely, who would pay for it? I mean, as with anything worth having, it has a cost. So absolutely, it needs to be thought about very carefully by government how it would be made commercially viable.
Yes. Lindsay, you were involved in the recent IPCC report on climate change and land use. And quite a lot of it, or sort of the coverage, concentrated on cattle like this, who do produce a lot of methane, don't they, which is a greenhouse gas. Now, were you saying in that report that we should all stop eating or eat less meat and become vegans?
We weren't. We were saying that there's a real need for agriculture to be more sustainable, and in some places that might be linked to making the livestock farming more sustainable, and there are various options that farmers have where they can reduce their emissions.
So you were talking more globally, that there are places in the world where cattle is produced in a really unsustainable way, clearing forests and feed, not fed on grass like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. If we look at some of the locations in South America, for example, where you've got forests that hold a lot of carbon, also have a lot of biodiversity, if you're going to clear those to make way for agriculture, then you are going to be in trouble. But there are sustainable systems.
And this is a sustainable model, is it here?
Do
you think here in this country we should eat less red meat?
I think we need to think about what people need to think about what they're eating, and a lot of it, if people do choose to eat meat, then they should be thinking about where they buy that meat from, buying British, buying local, shortening the supply chains to reduce the emissions associated, at least with the transport side of things. We also have a lot of food waste in the UK, and we should think about how we deal with that as well. And there's a lot of opportunities that can come from that.
Lindsay, Joe, we're going to talk much later again in the programme. That's it from us here on the farm in Leicestershire. Back to you guys.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it, to see it all this morning.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to get involved in any part